Sasuke, Ninja Warrior, Ninja, or whatever you prefer to call it. This has been a show engraved in all of our minds in some way, shape, or form. We all grew up watching the show at different points, ranging from tens of different countries. One of those countries was the United Kingdom, which took on Ninja Warrior on the TV channel Challenge. It was the most accessible way for one of the largest countries to get into the sport, and is still remembered fondly to this day. However, we're going to take a deep dive into the more forgotten history of Ninja Warrior on Challenge, one that could have cast a dark cloud on the country's adaptation for good, but was able to overcome it. This is the dark history of Ninja Warrior on Challenge. For the one person here who doesn't know what I'm talking about, I'll give a brief, and I mean brief, explanation. Sasuke, or something that most of you might know as Ninja Warrior, is a Japanese sports entertainment show that made its debut in September of 1997. The show was known for having a 4-stage obstacle course that would only increase in difficulty the further you made it along, the end goal being a final climb of the Midoriyama Tower to claim total victory. The show was very popular with Japanese audiences throughout its first two eras, being its time on Kinniku Benzuke as a special, and the era dominated by the All-Stars. This large viewership caused the first foreign broadcast of Sasuke in China or Hong Kong during 2005. Though there have been earlier showings on Jet TV in Taiwan, there is no concrete information on the exact date it was released. However, the smash hit of International Sasuke would not come until 2006, where the show would make its way to the United States on the G4 program. This was a massive step forward for the show internationally, as America would have a big impact on the Shin Sasuke era of the show. Eventually, Ninja Warrior made its way over in the UK and debuted on October 1st, 2007. As an adaptation of the G4 Ninja Warrior, it obviously had the same obstacle graphics, editing, and music that we would see in America. However, there was one key trait that stuck out among the other adaptations. While a lot of other countries would keep the G4 captions during the runs, the UK did something different. They had a commentator for the runs, being none other than acclaimed reporter Stuart Hall. Hall was not only a well-known face in the UK media for decades, but even the government. Later on, during the new year of 2012, he was appointed as an OBE by Queen Elizabeth. He had been notable for being the presenter on the game show It's a Knockout, and also, later on in his career, had become a well-known football reporter on BBC Radio. Going back to Ninja Warrior, Hall narrated tournaments 2 to 20 from 2007 to 2010. His commentary was highly praised amongst the UK audience, and was the main draw that gave Ninja Warrior on Challenge the edge over most other adaptations. That is, until his sudden departure from the show in 2011. Interestingly enough, despite the praise, Hall's role is rarely talked about nowadays. In fact, due to his replacement, Jim North, dubbing over those tournaments in the following years, there's very little footage of Hall's commentary. The only real clip that we currently have is this narration from Stage 2 in Ninja Warrior 7.
On another 7.5 meters of zip line to the landing stage.
Subsequently, Stuart Hall was permanently replaced by Jim North for tournaments 21 to 27, as fans of Challenge immediately caught on. So what really happened here? Hall's departure would become much more clear in May of 2012, when an article was released by journalist Yasmin Al-Bahai Brown. Brown detailed a lengthy anonymous letter about Hall sexually abusing the sender when she was underage. Brown expressed her anger at Hall's appointment as an OBE at the start of the year, and after being motivated to share her own personal experiences, she would turn the letter into the Ealing Metropolitan Police Station. Despite Hall denying all claims initially, police would eventually arrest him on December 5th, 2012, where he was charged with 3 counts of indecent assault, all before his time on Ninja Warrior. Hall was released on bail under the conditions he would not have unsupervised contact with children under the age of 17 while still denying the allegations. However, media coverage of the case was highly publicized, which made things go from bad to worse for Hall, as more accusers began to come forward. In January 2013, Hall would be charged with 15 counts of indecent assault on 10 different underage girls between the years of 1967 to 1986. Then, during a pre-trial hearing on April 16th of 2013, Hall would enter a guilty plea on all 15 counts mentioned and would be released on bond pending his sentence on June 17th. Eventually, 5 more allegations would come to light, and as a result, there had been even further investigation on Hall. With this new investigation came 16 new charges, and Hall would eventually plead guilty to 2 counts of indecent assault on a 13-year-old girl and was found not guilty of 15 charges of rape and 4 counts of indecent assault. Nevertheless, Hall was sentenced to 15 months in prison, and after extensions due to the factors against Hall, totaled to about 5 years in prison. Hall was released on December 16, 2015. He not only had to remain on the sex offender registry for the next 10 years, but also had his OBE stripped in October of 2013, and the BBC instantly terminated his contract once it became public knowledge of his guilty plea. With all of that now explained to the public, losing a name like Stuart Hall was a massive hit to Challenge and Ninja Warrior on their channel. Along with G4 dubs of Ninja Warrior ending after 2012, it was fair to assume that Challenge's version would meet the same fate. However, that isn't what happened. In fact, something a bit unexpected happened. First, Challenge began a process of replacing every dub that Stuart Hall had ever narrated. It was decided that they would bring in Jim North to voice over every tournament that Hall had done from Ninja Warrior 2 to 20, since he had already voiced over later tournaments after replacing Hall before his prosecution. With this, all episodes narrated by Stuart had been erased by Challenge and TBS entirely by 2013. The only way to find them is in small clips, and very few episodes are out there that exist of dubs narrated by Hall scouring the internet. What nobody was expecting, though, was that in the coming years, Challenge would dub tournaments that would never be touched by G4 beforehand. In 2015, Challenge would release Ninja Warriors 28 to 30, and 31 to 34 would follow in 2018. While they did not continue after that, it is still super admirable that the executives went this far to uphold Ninja Warrior on the channel. Finally, with this new narration, Jim North became an everyday household name on the show, and would become the voice many people remember to this day. His eccentric and hyper personality went beyond replicating Hall, as he became one of the standout announcers in Ninja Warrior worldwide. The series eventually ushered in many different iterations of the show to be made in the UK, through Ninja Warrior UK and the opening of ninja gyms throughout Europe over time. So while the UK will always have a dark patch in their Ninja Warrior history, its ability to overcome it and flourish better than it ever has before is something extremely admirable.